they all perverts?
The Umbrella Academy continues into its third season, with the Hargrave family thrust into a world they don't belong. This latest season takes inspiration from the third volume of the comic series, but it's very different in a lot of ways. The comic book was first created by Gerard Way in 2008. Way is also the frontman for the influential emo band My Chemical Romance. When it comes to this adaptation, did the showrunners rain on his Black Parade? Let's find out. I'm Chris Goodmakers, and these are the differences from comic to show.
Spoiler alert.
Let's start with arguably the central character of the series, certainly of the first season. Vanya, in the show now going by Viktor, is a pivotal member of the Academy. In both comic and show, they are supposedly the only member without powers. This is a subject of much displeasure and ridicule from their father and siblings. In the comic, Vanya is introduced much the same way. However, there is a large difference between how they are treated, especially by the narrative. Vanya doesn't even make it inside the mansion for a dance sequence before she is bitterly rebuked by Allison in the middle of a large battle. At this point, she had already been contacted by a mysterious man claiming to want her skills as a violinist for his apocalyptic performance. In fact, the first arc of the comic series is named Apocalypse Suite after this performance. After she is rejected by her family for her recent tell-all book, she runs back to the Music Meister. Come on, does this face not scream trustworthy? He, of course, tortures her and alters her physical body to create what he calls the White Violin. The ending of the comic and book are fairly similar, with Vanya and Viktor using their power to cause large chunks of the moon to fall to Earth. The biggest difference for Vanya versus Viktor is that in the show, Viktor gets a heartwarming moment where his family begins to accept him and value him as a member. In the comic, Five shoots Vanya in the back of the head, severely brain damaging her. After her traumatic brain injury, she suffers amnesia and paralysis, as you would expect. She also retains the alabaster white skin as a permanent feature. Viktor, however, only grows white when he uses his powers directly. He can also access his powers without a violin, making his powers much more, powerful.
This place is weird.
The Hotel Obsidian and its dark reflection, the Hotel Oblivion, are big features of the latest season. The mysterious, otherworldly building also features heavily in the third volume of the comic. In the show, the hotel is a once great but now forgotten high-class establishment. It was constructed in the early 1920s under the supervision and expense of Sir Reginald Hargreaves. While over the years it played host to politicians, royalty, celebrities, and other upper-crust types, its true purpose was deeply hidden. It was built around a portal to some kind of universe reset button. The comic version is very different. It's still built by Hargreaves, but for another purpose. The Hotel Oblivion is constructed on an alien planet as an eternal prison for supervillains. Sir Reg takes everyone he deems a great threat to the Academy and places them in the Oblivion, where they can never escape and must face the same endless monotony every day. Volume 3 is titled after the hotel. The plot mainly revolves around a massive jailbreak of all the supervillains locked therein. At the end of the volume, it is revealed that the hotel was also built as a sort of trap or cage for some unknown cosmic horror that is on its way. Though Hargreaves, as usual, remains incredibly secretive about exactly what. And there's not even any roach samurai in the comics. Point TV show. There's also some major differences in how the world of the Academy is portrayed. When we are introduced to the comic universe, there's an almost immediate difference. Aliens and knowledge of alien races is actually fairly common, judging by a wrestling match against one way back in 1989. Hargreaves has also had a much larger impact on the world than his Netflix counterpart. In the comics, he is responsible for introducing advanced tech like levitation belts and portable phones long before they were created in our world. He also created the world's favorite cereal brand. His work in creating chimps with human intelligence was not just limited to Pogo either. The comic features multiple monkeys acting as full members of society. It seems like he made almost every monkey smarter, like he was Caesar from Planet of the Apes. The The catalyst for both the comic and the series is that mysterious day in 1989 when multiple women across the globe suddenly grew pregnant with superpowered people. In both comic and show, Hargreaves managed to nab 7 of them. The comic is far more upfront about the amount of people born though. The show is far more vague about the amount of people, and their presence is felt much less in the world. The comic also has a far larger presence of supervillains. The Academy faces off against several mustache twirlers with names like Murder Magician and Dr. Terminal. They all operate far more like traditional comic villains, building attack robots and wearing silly costumes. The show is far less of this traditional aspect, mainly keeping its villains isolated to the Time Travel Authority and Papa Hargreaves himself.
You're a terrible father!
Klaus is arguably the most different from his comic-to-screen interpretations. The former hero has the power to channel ghosts and spirits, and use them to aid in crime fighting. Sort of. The power causes both versions an incredible amount of internal pain and turmoil. However, each version manifests this very differently. Comic Klaus, known mostly as Seance, is an all-black wearing, very pale-skinned sad boy. He has more in common with the comic's author than with his live-action self. He is openly depressed and sullen about his connection to ghosts, though both versions maintain a peculiar sense of humor. Show Klaus is far more upbeat and party-forward. Both versions have an unexpected new power development as well. For Comic Klaus, it's telekinesis powerful enough to stop the moon from falling. Meanwhile, in the 3rd season, Klaus learns that he can resurrect. That's right, this guy is completely unkillable and only needs a small amount of time to return from the dead. At both the climaxes of the comic and show, Klaus's channeling ability helps save the day. In the comic, he pretends to channel his dead father to scold Vanya in an elaborate distraction. He is of course lying because nothing is worth having his dad in his head, even saving the world. In the show, he actually channels Ben, who is able to tentacle their attackers. Out of all the umbrellas, arguably the closest to his comic counterpart is 5. Both end up trapped in the future after jumping forward in time. Both end up back in their childhood body while retaining the 40+ years of experience. However, there are still many differences between the two. Firstly, Comic 5 is informed that as a result of his time travel shenanigans, his cells have stopped aging altogether. He will now forever be trapped as a prepubescent child, something that causes deep anger in him. During the 3rd volume, he also takes a job as a hired gun. He lends his mercenary skills to the highest bidder while still wearing his old Academy supersuit. TV show 5 is of course still aging, seen both by the older version he finds in an iron lung and the fact that 5's actor is, you know, actually aging. A big revelation in the 2nd volume of the comics is that 2 of the Academy are actually related biologically, as much as people born immaculately can be. Luther and 5 are actually twins, born from the same mother. This looks like it was changed in the show as Harlan dispatches 6 women. The 7th woman would have been Ben's mother, so if Luther and 5 were twins, there would have been only 5 women in that truly hideous montage. That's gonna live rent-free in my nightmares. Let's talk about the people that don't exist. In the comic, I mean, not just generally. Being a larger adaptation means that new characters had to be added to explain certain storylines. Lila is the biggest example, having been entirely invented for the show. She shares this with Sissy, Leonard, and Dave. Leonard takes the place of the conductor in forcing out Victor's powers, but the rest are wholly invented to provide various romantic and emotional subplots. Nothing wrong with a little romance once in a while. The knife-throwing edgelord of the group, Diago has a lot of differences between his comic and show versions. Both do have the power of, knife throwing. However, comic Diago has the additional power of underwater breathing. He can spend large periods of time underwater, which gives his knives a bit more of a practical aspect. Comic Diago only has one eye as well, wearing a patch over his empty socket. It's not known how he lost the eye, but the look, plus his water breathing powers earns him the super name, the Kraken, which honestly seems way better suited to Ben. Krakens have tentacles. They don't throw knives. It's even more infuriating considering Ben's superhero name was the Horror. That makes way more sense for a knife guy. Why didn't you two swap? As far as adaptations go, Umbrella Academy is both wildly different and yet strangely faithful. When I was reading the comic for this video, I found that my biggest gripe was how much was left unexplained and unexplored. The show takes these smaller elements and expands them out in great detail. It also weaves in future plot lines earlier so they don't feel so abrupt. The best thing about the comic is the casual world building. The show is entering its 4th season soon and it's taking its own path. That's a great thing, and I look forward to where it goes.